I'm at the Habitat for Humanity thrift store here in Chicago. Let's see if we can find anything to restore and flip today. It's a Sunday, so it's pretty busy at the store. I'd like to finish this restoration project by the end of the day, and the sun sets at 7:49 p.m. tonight. And luckily, I quickly find this dresser, which is pretty beat up, especially on the top, but I see a lot of potential in fixing it up. It's listed for $50, which isn't an amazing price, but I think if it's restored correctly, we can flip it for $500, and the profits at Habitat for Humanity go to charity, so I don't mind overpaying a little bit. Let's take it home. So the plan for this dresser is we're going to sand down the top to bare wood and then restain it. And for the base, I want to fix some of the cracking veneer, so we'll use some wood glue and some wood filler. Then we'll give it a fresh new coat of paint and a new color. These drawer handles are actually really nice, so I think we'll keep them, freshen them up a bit, make them pop. Let's get started. Let's start by removing the drawers and taking off the handles. And once we have the drawers out, our next step is to sand down the top to bare wood. I start with a 120 grit sandpaper to more easily remove the old finish and damage. The old finish came off very smooth and satisfying on this piece. After that round of sanding, I focus more on the damaged parts and sand in a circular motion to get that area down to bare wood. But I'm careful not to sand down too far because I don't want to sand through the veneer. And once most of the damage is removed, I go over the entire top one more time with a 120 grit just to make sure all the old finish is completely removed. And after the 120 grit, I move to a less rough 220 grit sandpaper just to smooth out all the scratches on the top. And now that we have the top fully sanded down, I switch to my smaller mouse sander to sand down the base and the drawers. I'm always nervous to use a powerful circular sander on the base and the drawers because they can be much more brittle, and there's usually more detail that can be ruined by sanding down too far. And now that we have the entire dresser all sanded down, let's wipe off all the dust. And once it's dry, I use some wood glue to start repairing the veneer on the bottom. And I use some clamps to hold the veneer back onto the base while the glue dries. And once the wood glue is dry, I use some wood filler to try to fill in the spots where the veneer is completely missing. And I also do the same on the top where there's a couple spots where there's no veneer. While we let that wood filler dry, let's work on cleaning up the old drawer handles and hinges. And if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to subscribe, it helps a ton. Thanks! To get off the grease and the grime, I soak the handles and hinges in soapy water. Then I come in with some waterproof sandpaper to scuff up the finish a bit to help the new paint stick. And once dry, I bring them back outside and put them on some cardboard where I spray paint them with this gold spray paint because I think the gold will match the end color of the dresser much better. Now since the wood filler is completely dry, I use my circular sander at a lower speed and a 220 grit sandpaper to sand down the excess wood filler. The idea here is to sand it completely smooth so that when we add paint and stain at the end, it isn't noticeable at all. I was extra careful with the sander on the bottom part because of how brittle the veneer was, but actually after the wood glue it was much more secure. Our next step is to prep for painting. I need to cover up anything that isn't going to be painted, and I found that trash bags and tape are the best way to do this. I simply tape off the edges, and then I tape the trash bags on to cover up the larger surfaces on the top and on the drawers. And here's our last look at the dresser before the new paint. First I applied one coat of gray bonding primer to help our base coat stick better. When painting, I always use thin coats so that it doesn't drip down. And once the primer's dry, I apply a coat of this satin deep blue navy paint. The paint ended up being much brighter than I expected from a deep navy blue, but that's okay, I still think it looks really good. And about an hour after my first coat of blue, I apply another coat to cover up any missed spots and get a deeper overall blue color. Always apply at least 2 coats. Some projects will require 3 coats, depending on what color you're using and how thin you applied your first coat. And while we let that paint fully dry, let's move on to my favorite part of any flip, which is staining. First, I apply a pre-stain, which I let sit on the wood to absorb for about 15 minutes. And to apply it, I just dip a paper towel in the pre-stain and try to spread it evenly across the top surface. Then, I apply a dark walnut stain, the same way as the pre-stain, and I wipe it in the direction of the grain of the wood. I let the stain sit and absorb for about 5 minutes before wiping off the excess. So the sun's starting to get a bit low, so while we let that stain dry, let's start adding the handles back to the drawers to save some time. Once we get the doors and drawers back on the dresser, I apply a coat of polyurethane finish to help protect the wood from water damage. Just a reminder, this is what the dresser looked like before, and then after. I think it turned out great. This might be my favorite end product of any flip I've ever done, and I'm confident we'll find a buyer in just a few days. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video so you don't miss next week's flip.